What if the one thing holding you back is not your circumstances, not your past, and not other people, but the exact words you are saying to yourself right now? Most people never stop to check. They wake up, move through their day, and let whatever thoughts arrive first take complete control of how they feel, what they attempt, and what they believe is possible for them. And they do this every single day without ever questioning it. This book is going to change that. Over the next 10 chapters, you are going to discover something that will genuinely surprise you. The voice inside your head has been shaping your entire life, your confidence, your choices, your relationships, and your results, and you have had the power to change it this whole time. You just were never shown how. Here is what makes this different from anything you have tried before. You do not need more motivation. You do not need a complete life overhaul. You need 7 days. 7 days of talking to yourself differently. 7 days of choosing specific, honest, forward-moving words that your mind will actually respond to. 7 days that will show you, through your own lived experience, that the inner conversation is not something that happens to you. It is something you can direct. Stay with this, because what comes next is going to show you exactly how. Chapter 1. Discover the voice inside that shapes your life. There is a voice that never stops talking. It was there when you woke up this morning. It was there when you looked in the mirror. It was there when you sat down to eat, when you drove to work, when you made a mistake, and when you tried to fall asleep last night. This voice does not take breaks. It does not go on vacation. It does not leave you alone. And whether you have noticed it or not, this voice has been shaping every single decision you have made, every emotion you have felt, and every outcome you have created in your life. This voice is your self-talk. And right now, today, in this very moment, it is either working for you or working against you. Most people never stop to examine this voice. They go through their entire lives carrying conversations in their heads that drain their energy, destroy their confidence, and quietly convince them that they are not enough. They wonder why they feel stuck. They wonder why success feels so far away. They wonder why, no matter how hard they try, something inside them always pulls them back. The answer is not found in their circumstances. The answer is found in the words they say to themselves when no one else is listening. Think about the last time something went wrong in your life. Maybe you made an error at work. Maybe a relationship hit a painful moment. Maybe you looked at where you are right now and compared it to where you thought you would be by this point. What did the voice inside your head say? Did it say, "This is a setback, but I will learn from it and keep going"? Or did it say something closer to, "You always mess things up. You are so behind. Other people have it figured out. Why can you not get your life together?" Most people, if they are honest, will recognize the second voice. And that second voice is not the truth. It is a habit. A deeply ingrained, endlessly repeated habit that was formed years ago, possibly in childhood, possibly through painful experiences, possibly through years of absorbing the criticism of others until you started doing the criticizing yourself. But just because something is a habit does not mean it is permanent. Habits can be broken. New habits can be built. And that is exactly what this book is about. Before you can change the voice, you have to hear it clearly. You have to stop and actually listen to what it is saying. This sounds simple, but for most people it is surprisingly difficult. The inner voice has been running in the background for so long that it feels like the truth. It feels like reality. It feels like just the way things are, but it is not reality. It is a story you have been telling yourself so many times that you stopped questioning it. Here is something important to understand. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. It is designed to keep you safe. And to your brain, the familiar feels safe, even when the familiar is painful. Even when the familiar is a story of not being good enough, not being smart enough, not being worthy of love or success, your brain will defend that story because it knows that story. It has run that story 1,000 times. Changing the story feels uncertain, and uncertainty feels dangerous to the brain. So the voice keeps repeating the old narrative, not because it is true, but because it is comfortable and known. This is why so many people try to make changes in their lives and fail. They change their actions, but they do not change their inner conversation. They start a new habit, but the voice says, "This will not last. You have tried before." They step toward a new opportunity, but the voice says, "You are not qualified. Someone else would do this better." They try to believe in themselves, but the voice says, "Who do you think you are?" And eventually, those words win. Not because they are true, but because they go unchallenged. The single most powerful thing you can do to begin transforming your life is to start paying attention to what you are saying to yourself. Not tomorrow, not after you finish this book. Starting today, right now. You need to become the observer of your own mind. You need to step back from the automatic flow of your thoughts and start noticing the patterns, the recurring messages, the tone, the language, and the beliefs buried inside your daily inner conversation. One practical way to begin this is to keep a small notebook or use your phone to write down the thoughts you notice throughout the day. Not all of them, because your brain produces thousands of thoughts every single day. But the ones that carry weight, the ones that appear when you face a challenge, the ones that speak up when you make a mistake, the ones that arrive when you dare to dream about something bigger for your life. Write them down, read them back. Ask yourself honestly, would I say these things to someone I love? Would I say these things to a child? Would I say these things to my closest friend who came to me struggling and hurting and needing support? The answer, for most people, is no. You would never speak to someone you care about the way you speak to yourself. You would never tell your friend, "You are such a failure. You always ruin everything. You are not smart enough to figure this out. Nobody really believes in you." You would never say those things out loud to another person, but you say them silently to yourself every single day, and you have been doing it for years. This is the contradiction that holds so many people back. They have enormous compassion for others, but almost none for themselves. They are patient with other people's mistakes, but brutal toward their own. They cheer for others, but quietly believe they are somehow less deserving of the same success and happiness they want for the people they love. The journey this book takes you on begins right here, with the recognition that the way you talk to yourself matters more than almost anything else in your life. More than your circumstances, more than your past, more than the opinions of other people, because the voice inside your head is the one voice you carry everywhere, into every room, every relationship, every opportunity, every hard moment, and every hopeful beginning. Now here is the part that changes everything. You are not your thoughts. Read that again slowly. You are not your thoughts. You are the person who is aware of your thoughts. You are the observer. And because you are the observer, you have something incredible available to you. You have the power to choose which thoughts you feed and which thoughts you let go. You have the power to redirect the conversation in your mind. You have the power to write a new script. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. This is not about ignoring pain or forcing yourself to feel happy when you do not. Authentic self-talk is not about fake positivity. It is about honest, grounded, forward-moving conversation with yourself. It is about replacing statements that destroy you with statements that are both truthful and empowering. Instead of, "I always fail," you say, "I have struggled, but I am learning and I am getting better." Instead of, "I am not good enough," you say, I am growing, and growth takes time. Instead of, nobody believes in me, you say, I believe in me, and that is where it starts. These are not just nice words, they are directions you give your brain. They are instructions that shape your focus, your decisions, your emotions, and ultimately, your actions. When you change the instruction, you change the direction. And when you change the direction consistently over days and weeks and months, you change the destination. Think about a ship crossing the ocean. A 1-degree shift in the compass at the start of the journey seems almost invisible. But by the time the ship has traveled hundreds of miles, that 1-degree difference has created an entirely different arrival point. Your thoughts work the same way. Small shifts, made consistently, lead to completely different outcomes. This book gives you 7 days to begin making those shifts. 7 days to interrupt the automatic, unconscious pattern of self-defeating talk and replace it with something that builds you instead of breaking you. 7 days is not a long time, but it is enough time to feel a difference. It is enough time to notice how differently you carry yourself when the voice in your head becomes an ally instead of an enemy. It is enough time to experience what it feels like when you walk into a room believing in your own worth, when you face a hard day without collapsing into self-criticism, when you make a mistake and respond with understanding instead of shame. The world around you may not change in 7 days, but the way you experience the world will begin to shift. And that shift starts with a single decision you make right now, in this chapter, on this page. The decision to pay attention, the decision to stop letting the inner voice run unchecked. The decision to take responsibility not just for your actions, but for the conversation happening inside you every waking hour of every single day. You were not born with a negative inner voice. Children do not start their lives telling themselves they are worthless or incapable. That voice was shaped over time, through experiences, through the words of others, through disappointments that were never properly processed, through a world that often measures worth by achievement and appearance. But what was shaped can be reshaped. What was learned can be unlearned. What was built in the wrong direction can be rebuilt in the right one. You are reading this book because something inside you knows that change is possible. Something inside you is reaching for more than the life the old voice has been limiting you to. That reaching, that hunger, that belief that there must be more available to you, that is the truest and most important voice you have. Not the voice of fear and self-doubt, but the voice of possibility. The voice that brought you here. The voice that is willing to try one more time, to believe one more time, to take one more step forward even when the road has been hard. Honor that voice. Feed it. Give it space and language and daily practice. That is what this book will teach you to do. Not through complicated theories or impossible standards, but through simple, daily, practical shifts in the way you speak to yourself. One sentence at a time. One morning at a time. One honest, courageous, self-directed conversation at a time. By the time you reach the final chapter, you will not be the same person who opened this book today, not because of anything magical or unrealistic, but because you will have spent 7 days doing something most people never do in an entire lifetime. You will have turned the most important conversation in your life, the one happening inside your own mind, from a source of destruction into a source of strength. This is where that journey begins. Not out there, in here, in the voice that never stops talking, the voice you are finally ready to change. Chapter 2. Replace your worst thoughts with words that heal. There is a moment that most people know well. Something goes wrong, and before the situation has even fully registered, the mind has already produced a verdict, not a careful, considered response. Not a measured assessment of what happened and what to do next, just a fast, sharp, automatic judgment And that judgment is almost always harsh, almost always final, almost always directed inward. You forgot something important and the mind says, "You are so irresponsible." You stumbled in front of others and the mind says, "How embarrassing. What is wrong with you?" You tried something new and it did not work out, and the mind says, "You knew this would happen. You are not cut out for this." These responses feel like honesty. They feel like self-awareness, but they are not. They are wounds dressed up as wisdom. They are old pain speaking in the language of fact. The human mind, when left without direction, defaults to the negative. This is not a character flaw, it is biology. For thousands of years, survival depended on the ability to spot danger quickly, to assume the worst before the worst could arrive uninvited. The brain that assumed the rustling in the bushes was a predator survived longer than the brain that assumed it was a gentle breeze. That threat detection system saved lives for millennia. But in the modern world, that same system misfires constantly. There is no predator in the bushes. There is a deadline at work, a difficult conversation, a moment of failure, a quiet afternoon that somehow feels loaded with dread. And the ancient survival brain responds to all of it the same way, with alarm, with danger signals, with the kind of language that was designed for emergencies but now runs during ordinary Tuesday mornings. Understanding this does not make the harsh inner voice disappear, but it does something equally important. It removes the authority that voice has been given without question. When you understand that negative self-talk is a biological default and not a moral truth, you stop treating it like a verdict. You start treating it like a first draft. And first drafts, as every writer knows, are meant to be rewritten. The practice of replacing destructive thoughts with healing words is not about denial. It is not about slapping a cheerful sentence over a painful reality and hoping it sticks. Real healing in the mind begins with acknowledgement. You have to be willing to look at the thought clearly before you can change it honestly. If something genuinely went wrong, pretending otherwise does not heal anything. What heals is the way you choose to frame what happened, the meaning you assign to it, and the direction your inner conversation points you toward after the initial storm passes. Consider the difference between these two responses to failure. The first says, "I failed because I am not capable. This proves I should not have tried. I will probably fail again." The second says, "This did not work. That is painful and real. But it tells me something useful, and I am going to find out what that is." Both responses are talking about the same event, but they are not taking the person to the same place. The first response closes doors. It assigns permanent meaning to a temporary outcome. The second response stays open. It treats the failure as information rather than identity. Words carry weight that most people underestimate. When you say something to yourself repeatedly, your brain begins to build neural pathways around that statement. It starts to look for evidence that supports it. It filters your daily experience through the lens of whatever story you are consistently telling. Tell yourself you are incapable long enough, and your brain will start spotting every piece of evidence that confirms incapability while filtering out the evidence of your strength. This is not a metaphor. This is how the brain actually functions. It is called confirmation bias, and your self-talk is one of the primary things that feeds it. This means that every time you choose a different word, a more honest and forward-pointing word, you are doing more than just thinking a nicer thought. You are physically redirecting the patterns inside your own mind. You are interrupting a circuit that has been running automatically and installing a new one in its place. This takes repetition. It takes patience. It takes the willingness to catch yourself mid-thought and say, "That is not the whole story." What is a more honest way to look at this? A useful practice is what can be called the replacement pause. The moment you notice a damaging thought arriving, instead of following it where it wants to go, you pause. Not to suppress it or pretend it is not there. You simply pause long enough to ask one question. Is this thought helping me move forward, or is it keeping me frozen? If it is keeping you frozen, it does not deserve the full weight of your attention. You acknowledge it briefly, the way you might acknowledge a passing cloud, and then you deliberately choose a replacement. The replacement does not have to be wildly positive. It does not have to be a bold declaration of self-belief that feels foreign and forced. It just has to be more useful and more truthful than the thought it is replacing. I am a failure gets replaced with, I am someone who has not figured this out yet. Nobody cares about what I have to offer gets replaced with, I have not yet found the right way to communicate my value. I will never change gets replaced with, change is hard and slow, and I am still in the process. These replacements are not lies, they are more complete versions of the truth. There is also something deeply important about the tone you use when you speak to yourself. The same words delivered in a tone of contempt and the same words delivered in a tone of understanding produce completely different experiences inside the body. You can say, I made a mistake, with shame dripping from every syllable, or you can say it the way a patient teacher might say it to a student who is still learning. Same words. Entirely different impact. Learning to soften the tone of your inner voice is as important as changing the words themselves. Many people grew up in environments where love felt conditional, where mistakes were met with harshness, where worthiness had to be earned through performance. If that is part of your story, then the inner voice you carry today may sound remarkably like the voices from that environment. It may carry the same impatience, the same disappointment, the same sharp edges. And for years, you may have accepted that voice as the standard you deserve. You do not. Nobody does. The fact that harsh words were aimed at you by others does not mean those words were true, and it does not mean you are obligated to keep repeating them to yourself for the rest of your life. Healing self-talk is partly the work of grieving what you needed and did not receive, and then choosing to offer it to yourself now. It is the work of becoming the voice you needed when you were younger, kinder, more patient, more honest in a way that builds rather than destroys. This is not weakness. It is one of the most courageous things a person can do, because it means going against years of ingrained habit. It means refusing to accept a standard of self-treatment that was handed to you without your consent. Start today with one simple shift. Every time you catch yourself using the word always or never in a negative self-directed sentence, stop and remove it. I always mess up becomes, I made a mistake this time. I never get things right becomes, this one did not go the way I wanted. Those two small words, always and never, are among the most damaging in the vocabulary of self-talk, because they turn single events into permanent identities. Removing them is not a small thing. It is the beginning of refusing to let one bad moment define an entire life. The thoughts you carry today were built over years. They will not dissolve in an afternoon, but every single moment you choose a more healing word over a harmful one, you are doing real work. You are rebuilding something important. You are learning, perhaps for the first time in your life, that the way you speak to yourself is not fixed. It is a choice. And that choice, made again and again across 7 days and beyond, has the power to change not just how you feel, but who you become. Chapter 3. Speak strength into yourself every single morning. The morning is not just the start of a day, it is the start of a direction. What happens in the first few minutes after you open your eyes sets the tone for everything that follows. The way you handle pressure, the way you treat people around you, the way you respond to setbacks, the level of energy you bring to your work, and the degree of belief you carry into every challenge the day places in front of you. Most people waste this window without realizing it. They reach for their phone before they have even fully woken up. They flood their minds with news, notifications, other people's opinions, and the endless noise of a world that never stops demanding attention. And then they wonder why they feel anxious before the day has even properly begun. What you feed your mind in the morning is what your mind works with for the rest of the day. This is not poetic language. This is how the brain operates. The mind in the early morning hours is in a uniquely receptive state. The transition from sleep to full wakefulness passes through a window where the brain is especially open to suggestion, to impression, to the material it will use to construct the emotional and mental framework of the coming hours. Athletes know this. High performers know this. People who have built remarkable lives out of ordinary circumstances know this. They guard the morning. They treat it as sacred territory. And they use it deliberately to speak something powerful into themselves before the world gets the chance to speak anything else. Strength does not arrive on its own. It is not something that shows up automatically when you need it. Strength is cultivated. It is built through practice, through repetition, through the daily act of reminding yourself of what you are capable of before doubt and distraction have the chance to remind you of your limitations. A morning practice of intentional self-talk is one of the most direct and underused tools available to any person who wants to live with more purpose, more resilience, and more consistent forward movement. Think about what happens to a plant that receives no water in the morning. It can survive for a while on what it stored from the day before, but eventually, without consistent nourishment, it begins to wilt. The leaves lose their firmness, the color fades, the growth slows, and then stops. A human being operates on a strikingly similar principle. You can coast for a while on old momentum, on the residue of a good day, on the energy of a rare moment of confidence. But without daily, deliberate nourishment of the mind, the inner life begins to shrink. Confidence erodes quietly. Doubt fills the space that intentional thought left empty. And the person who once moved forward with energy finds themselves hesitating at every door. The remedy is simpler than most people expect. It does not require hours. It does not require a perfect environment or a complicated routine. It requires only a few minutes of honest, deliberate, forward-pointing conversation with yourself before the day takes over. The content of that conversation matters enormously. And yet most people have never once thought about what they actually want to say to themselves in the morning. They just let whatever thoughts arrive first take the wheel and drive the day wherever those thoughts want to go. Beginning a morning with strength-based self-talk means making a conscious decision about the lens through which you will see the coming hours. It means reminding yourself of your capacity before you are tested. It means speaking to yourself about who you are choosing to be today, not who you were on your worst day, not who fear tells you that you are, but who you are in your most honest and committed self. This is not performance. This is preparation. The same way a soldier does not wait until the battle begins to prepare mentally, you do not wait until the pressure of the day arrives to decide what you believe about yourself. One of the most effective morning practices is to begin with 3 specific statements, not generic affirmations copied from a poster, not words that feel hollow because they do not match anything real in your life, but 3 statements that are both personally true and deliberately chosen to direct your focus towards strength rather than weakness. The first statement should acknowledge something real about your character, something you genuinely know to be true about who you are. I am someone who keeps going even when it is hard. I am someone who genuinely cares about doing good work. I am someone who has survived difficult things and is still standing. These are not wishes. They are facts you are choosing to hold in the front of your mind. The second statement should be about your intention for the day, not a task list, not a set of goals. a statement about how you intend to show up. Today, I will respond to challenges with patience instead of panic. Today, I will stay focused on what I can control. Today, I will treat myself with the same respect I give to others. This kind of intentional framing gives the day a direction before it has even started. It tells your brain what to prioritize, what to return to when things get difficult, and what standard you are holding yourself to, not out of self-judgment, but out of self-respect. The third statement should be about possibility. Something that reminds you that today holds real potential, that something worthwhile can come from the hours ahead, that your effort today is connected to something meaningful even when the work feels routine. Something good is available to me today if I stay open to it. The effort I put in today is building something I cannot yet fully see. I have more capacity than I used yesterday, and today I will use more of it. These statements are not fantasies. They are deliberate acts of mental positioning that keep you oriented toward growth rather than stagnation. The physical dimension of morning self-talk is also worth considering. There is a significant difference between muttering something quietly in your head while still half asleep and standing upright, breathing deeply, and speaking words with genuine intention. The body and mind are not separate systems. They communicate with each other constantly. When you stand tall and speak with conviction, even quietly, even alone in your own room, the body sends signals to the brain that reinforce the content of what is being said. Posture affects psychology. Breath affects mental state. The physical act of speaking strength, not just thinking it, creates a different and more powerful internal experience. Many people feel awkward doing this at first. They feel self-conscious, speaking to themselves with deliberate intention. They feel as though they are pretending, as though the words are bigger than the reality they currently occupy. This discomfort is not a sign that the practice is not working. It is a sign that the practice is new. Anything done for the first time in a new direction feels unfamiliar. That feeling of unfamiliarity is not evidence of falsehood. It is evidence of growth. You are training a muscle that has been underused. And like any muscle in the early stages of training, it will feel strange and difficult before it begins to feel natural and strong. There is also a deeper dimension to speaking strength in the morning that goes beyond performance and productivity. It is about dignity. Every human being deserves to begin their day being spoken to with respect, with encouragement, with the kind of honest and grounded belief that says, "You matter. What you do today matters. You have what it takes to face what is coming." Most people receive this kind of affirmation rarely, if at all, from the world around them. Bosses are busy, families are distracted, friends are fighting their own battles. The world is not designed to stop each morning and remind you of your worth. That job belongs to you. And when you take that job seriously, when you become the voice that consistently speaks strength into your own life, something fundamental shifts in how you move through the world. You stop waiting for permission to feel confident. You stop needing external validation before you can trust yourself. You stop shrinking in rooms where you previously made yourself small. Not because you have become arrogant, but because you have become anchored. Anchored in a daily practice that connects you to your own strength before the demands of the day have the chance to disconnect you from it. 7 days of this practice will show you something you may not have expected. The mornings where you least feel like speaking strength into yourself are the mornings where doing so matters the most. On the days when you wake up tired, discouraged, carrying the weight of yesterday's difficulties, the easiest thing is to skip the practice, to tell yourself you will try again tomorrow when you feel better. But waiting to feel strong before you speak. Strength is like waiting to get fit before you go to the gym. The practice is what produces the feeling. The action precedes the emotion, not the other way around. Commit to the morning. Commit to showing up for yourself in those first quiet minutes before the noise begins. Commit to speaking something true and powerful and forward-moving into your own life every single day. Not because every morning will feel transformational, not because the words will always feel fully believable, but because the person who speaks strength into themselves every morning, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days, is building something that no external circumstance can easily take away. They are building an inner foundation that holds when everything else shakes. That foundation begins in the morning. It begins with the first words you choose to say to yourself. Choose them with care. Choose them with intention. Choose them like they matter, because they do. Chapter 4. Silence the inner critic that has held you back. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical tiredness. It is the exhaustion that comes from spending years fighting a battle inside your own mind. From waking up every morning and immediately facing a voice that questions your worth, doubts your ability, and reminds you of every mistake you have ever made. From carrying around a constant companion that never cheers for you, never encourages you, and never once says, "You are doing well, keep going." This exhaustion is real, it is heavy. And for millions of people, it is so familiar that they have stopped noticing it altogether. They have simply accepted it as the price of being alive. But it is not the price of being alive. It is the cost of an unchallenged inner critic. And unlike taxes or gravity, this is one burden you actually have the power to put down. The inner critic is not your conscience. This distinction matters enormously, and most people miss it entirely. Your conscience is the part of you that genuinely cares about doing what is right. It speaks up when you have acted in a way that conflicts with your values. It feels like a quiet, firm nudge in a direction that matters. The inner critic is something entirely different. It does not care about your values or your growth. It cares about keeping you small. It speaks in exaggerations and absolutes. It catastrophizes ordinary setbacks. It takes the fact that you made one poor decision and builds an entire case for why you are fundamentally flawed as a human being. The conscience says, "That was wrong, and here is how you can do better." The inner critic says, "That was wrong, and it proves you are not good enough, and you probably never will be." Learning to tell the difference between these two voices is one of the most valuable skills you will ever develop. Because one of them deserves your attention, and the other one deserves to be questioned at every turn. The inner critic was not born with you. Nobody enters the world already convinced of their own inadequacy. Infants do not lie in their cribs, cataloging their failures. Children learning to walk do not fall down and conclude they are permanently incapable. The relentless self-criticism that so many adults carry was taught. It was absorbed. It was built from the accumulated experiences of a life where someone, somewhere, communicated that you were not quite right, not quite smart enough, not quite talented enough, not quite worthy of the love and acceptance you needed. Those messages came from parents who were carrying their own wounds, from teachers who had their own blind spots, from peers who were navigating their own insecurities, from a culture that profits enormously from people believing they are perpetually lacking something. None of those sources were qualified to determine your worth, and yet their words became the script your inner critic reads from every single day. The first step in silencing the inner critic is to stop treating its words as objective truth and start treating them as what they actually are, which is old programming running in new situations. When the critic says, "You are going to embarrass yourself," it is not predicting the future, it is replaying a memory. When it says, "You are not smart enough for this," it is not conducting an honest assessment of your capabilities. It is echoing a message it received years ago and has been repeating ever since. Recognizing this does not make the voice disappear immediately, but it strips the voice of the authority it has been wielding without justification. A powerful practice for beginning to loosen the grip of the inner critic is to name it. This sounds almost too simple to be meaningful, but the psychological effect is significant. When you give the inner critic a separate identity, even something as straightforward as calling it the critic or the old voice, you create distance between that voice and your actual self. Instead of thinking, "I am not good enough," you begin to notice the critic is saying, "I am not good enough again." That shift from first person to observer changes everything. It reminds you that you are not the thought. You are the person noticing the thought. And the person noticing the thought has the ability to evaluate it, challenge it, and choose not to follow where it leads. From that place of observation, you can begin to do something the inner critic has never been subjected to in your life. You can cross-examine it. When the critic makes a claim, you ask for evidence. Not in the way a person argues with themselves in frustration, but the way a skilled and calm attorney questions a witness who is overstating their case. You say, "I always fail." Always? What about the time I finished something difficult and it worked out? What about the skills I have built? What about the problems I have solved that once seemed impossible? The inner critic cannot survive honest cross-examination. Its arguments are built on selective memory and emotional intensity, not on a fair reading of the full evidence of your life. There is also a question worth sitting with honestly. What has the inner critic actually helped you achieve? If constant self-criticism were an effective strategy for growth, then the harshest self-critics would be the most successful and fulfilled people in the world. But that is not what we see. What we see instead is that the people who criticize themselves most severely tend to struggle most with taking risks, recovering from setbacks, maintaining consistent effort, and experiencing genuine satisfaction from their accomplishments. The inner critic does not make you better, it makes you more afraid. And fear, while useful in genuine emergencies, is a terrible long-term strategy for building a meaningful life. Some people resist the idea of quieting the inner critic because they have convinced themselves that it is what keeps them from becoming lazy or arrogant. They believe that without the constant pressure of self-judgment, they would stop caring about quality, stop pushing themselves, stop growing. This belief is understandable, but it is not supported by reality. The motivation that comes from self-criticism is driven by the fear of being inadequate. The motivation that comes from genuine self-belief is driven by the desire to express what you are truly capable of. Fear-based motivation is exhausting and unstable. It requires constant pressure to keep moving. Belief-based motivation is sustainable because it comes from a place of genuine investment in your own potential. Think about the difference between a person who works hard because they are terrified of failure and a person who works hard because they genuinely believe in what they are building. Both may produce results in the short term, but only one of them experiences the process as meaningful rather than punishing. Only one of them keeps going when external pressure drops. Only one of them builds the kind of deep, lasting commitment that creates extraordinary outcomes over years rather than just impressive bursts of anxious productivity. Silencing the inner critic does not mean you stop caring about excellence. It means you pursue excellence from a foundation of self-respect rather than self-contempt. It means you hold yourself to high standards while also treating the inevitable imperfections of being human with patience rather than prosecution. It means you become the kind of inner voice that a great coach would be, honest about what needs to improve, clear about what the standard is, but never once suggesting that the person being coached is worthless or beyond development. Consider the way the best coaches and mentors in the world communicate with the people they are developing. They do not tear people apart and call it feedback. They identify specific behaviors that need to change while consistently affirming the fundamental capability of the person they are working with. They separate the action from the identity. They say, "That approach did not work, and here is a better one." Never. "You are inadequate, and this proves it." You deserve that same quality of internal coaching, and you are the only one who can provide it. Practically speaking, the work of silencing the inner critic happens one moment at a time. It is not a single dramatic confrontation where you defeat the voice forever and it never returns. It is a daily, sometimes hourly, practice of noticing when the critic has taken the microphone and gently but firmly taking it back. It is the practice of replacing prosecution with curiosity. Instead of, "Why did I do that? What is wrong with me?" you ask, "What happened there? And what can I learn from it?" Instead of, "I cannot believe I said that," you say, "That did not come out the way I intended. What would I say differently next time?" The questions you ask yourself determine the direction your mind travels. Prosecutorial questions lead to shame and paralysis. Curious questions lead to understanding and growth. The days you spend practicing this will not all feel like victories. Some days the inner critic will be louder than others. Some days old wounds will make the voice harder to separate from the truth. On those days, the practice is not to silence the critic with force, but to hold its words more lightly. To say, "I hear you, and I am not going to let you steer today," to keep moving forward anyway, not because the voice has been completely quieted, but because you have decided that its volume is not a measurement of its accuracy. The life waiting for you on the other side of a silenced inner critic is not a life without challenge or difficulty. It is a life where challenge and difficulty are met with the full force of who you actually are, undiminished by the constant drain of self-attack. It is a life where your energy goes toward building rather than toward the exhausting work of defending yourself against your own mind. It is a life where you finally get to find out what you are genuinely capable of when the loudest voice in the room is no longer working against you. That life is available. It begins the moment you decide that the inner critic has held the microphone long enough and that today you are taking it back. Chapter 5. Build unshakable belief through what you tell yourself. There is a quality that separates people who achieve remarkable things from people who spend their lives wondering what might have been possible. It is not talent. Talent is common. The world is filled with talented people who never fully express what they carry inside them. It is not opportunity. Opportunity presents itself to people at every level of life, in every kind of circumstance, in every corner of the world. It is not even hard work, because there are plenty of hard-working people who grind themselves down without ever breaking through to the life they are working toward. The quality that makes the real difference, the one that determines whether talent gets expressed, whether opportunity gets seized, whether hard work compounds into something meaningful, is belief. Specifically, the kind of belief that does not collapse when circumstances get difficult. The kind that does not require external confirmation before it can exist. The kind that lives in a person so deeply that it continues to function even when everything around them is uncertain and uncomfortable. This is what unshakable belief looks like. And despite what many people assume, it is not a personality trait that some people are born with and others are simply denied. It is something that is built. It is constructed, piece by piece, through a process that happens largely inside the mind. And the primary tool used to build it is the same tool that has been at the center of every chapter in this book. It is the words you choose to say to yourself, consistently, deliberately, over time. Belief is not a feeling that arrives and then stays permanently once you have earned it. It is more like a fire. A fire does not maintain itself. It requires fuel. it requires tending. It requires consistent attention, because without that attention, even the strongest fire begins to dim and eventually goes cold. The people who seem to carry unshakable belief are not people who were handed a permanent supply of it at birth. They are people who have learned, consciously or through hard experience, how to keep feeding the fire, how to return to their own inner conversation and find there the material that keeps the belief burning, even when the winds of doubt and difficulty are blowing hard. Most people approach belief backwards. They wait to feel certain before they speak with confidence. They wait for evidence of success before they allow themselves to believe in the possibility of success. They treat belief as a reward that follows achievement rather than as a foundation that makes achievement possible. But this approach creates a cycle that is almost impossible to break. You cannot gather evidence of success without first taking action. You cannot take meaningful action without a baseline of belief that the action is worth taking. And you cannot build that baseline of belief while you are waiting for results that have not yet arrived. The only way to break this cycle is to begin building belief before the evidence fully exists. To speak to yourself as though the outcome you are working toward is genuinely possible, not because you are certain it will happen, but because certainty is never available in advance, and waiting for it means waiting forever. This is not recklessness. It is not the same as ignoring reality or pretending that obstacles do not exist. Building belief through deliberate self-talk is about choosing to orient your inner conversation toward possibility and capability rather than toward limitation and doubt. It is about understanding that your mind will find evidence for whatever story it is given to work with, and making a conscious decision to give it a story worth finding evidence for. The language of belief has a specific character that is worth understanding clearly. It is direct without being arrogant. It is honest without being harsh. It acknowledges difficulty without surrendering to it. When someone with genuine self-belief encounters a challenge, their inner conversation does not say, "This is too hard and I cannot handle it." It says, "This is genuinely difficult and I have handled difficult things before." It does not say, "I have no idea what I am doing." It says, "I do not know this yet, and I am capable of learning it." It does not say, "What if I fail?" It says, "Failure is a real possibility, and it will not define me or stop me." These are not just more pleasant thoughts, they are more accurate thoughts. Because the truth is that most people are far more capable than they currently believe, and the primary reason they do not experience that capability is that their inner conversation consistently sells them short. One of the most important things to understand about building belief through self-talk is that the process works cumulatively. A single day of speaking confidently to yourself will not transform years of ingrained self-doubt. But 7 days of consistent practice creates a measurable shift. 30 days creates a genuine change in the patterns of thought. 6 months of daily, intentional inner conversation begins to produce results that were previously unimaginable, not because the world changed, but because the person moving through the world changed in how they see themselves and what they believe they deserve to pursue. The cumulative nature of this process means that consistency matters far more than intensity. A dramatic burst of self-belief that lasts for one afternoon and then disappears accomplishes very little. But a quiet, steady, daily practice of returning to language that affirms your capability and your worth, done even on the days when it feels difficult or unconvincing, builds something durable over time. This is why the 7-day framework of this book matters. Not because 7 days is a magic number that completes the transformation, but because 7 days of consistent practice is enough to begin experiencing the difference between a mind that talks itself down and a mind that talks itself forward. There is a specific enemy of belief that deserves direct attention here, because it operates so subtly that most people never identify it as the problem it is. That enemy is the conditional statement. The conditional statement is any thought that begins with, "I will believe in myself when," or "I will feel confident after," or "once I have achieved this, then I will know I am capable." Conditional belief is not belief at all. It is postponement disguised as a reasonable position. It is the mind's way of protecting itself from the vulnerability of genuine commitment by making belief dependent on something that has not happened yet. And because there will always be another condition to meet, another achievement to reach before the belief feels fully earned, the person living in conditional belief never quite arrives at the place where they allow themselves to fully trust their own worth and capacity. The antidote to conditional belief is unconditional self-talk. It is the practice of speaking to yourself as a person of value and capability, not because of what you have achieved, but because of who you are choosing to be. This does not mean pretending your weaknesses do not exist. It means refusing to let your weaknesses write the conclusion of your story while your strengths are still in the room. It means saying, "I am a person who is worthy of this effort," before the effort has produced its results, not after. Belief also has a social dimension that is easy to overlook. The people around you will often reflect back to you the level of belief you hold about yourself. When you speak about yourself with consistent doubt, when you preemptively undercut your own ideas, when you regularly signal through your words and posture that you do not fully trust your own judgment, the world tends to take you at your word. People treat you according to the estimate you appear to hold of yourself. This is not because other people are unkind. It is simply because human beings naturally calibrate their response to someone based on the signals that person sends about how they see themselves. When you begin to change your inner conversation, when you begin to carry the language of genuine self-belief rather than chronic self-doubt, that change eventually surfaces in how you speak, how you carry yourself, and how you engage with others. And the world begins to respond differently. Building unshakable belief is also about learning to manage the inevitable moments when belief wavers, because it will waver. No matter how consistent your practice, there will be days when doubt arrives loudly, and the language of confidence feels thin and unconvincing. On those days, the practice is not to force yourself into a state of artificial certainty. It is to return to the basics. To say something small and true rather than something large and forced. I have gotten through hard days before. I do not need to have everything figured out right now. I am still in this, and that counts for something. Small, honest statements of forward-pointing truth are more powerful on difficult days than grand declarations that the mind cannot yet fully accept. The architecture of unshakable belief is built not from a single dramatic decision, but from thousands of small conversational choices made across ordinary days. It is built every time you catch a self-defeating thought and choose a more capable one. Every time you speak about your potential with honesty rather than apology. Every time you treat a setback as a lesson rather than a verdict. Every time you return to your own inner conversation and find there not a prosecutor, not a skeptic, not a voice that chips away at your foundation, but a voice that says clearly and without qualification, you have what it takes to keep going, and keeping going is exactly what you are going to do. That voice, spoken consistently into the interior of your own life, is the single most powerful construction material available for building the kind of belief that does not bend when life pushes back. It does not require special circumstances. It does not require that your past has been easy or your present feels certain. It requires only the daily decision to speak to yourself as someone worth believing in. Make that decision today. Make it again tomorrow. Make it on the days when it is hard and the days when it feels impossible. Because the belief you are building through that daily practice is not just about what you will achieve. It is about who you are becoming in the process of choosing, again and again, to trust yourself enough to keep going. Chapter 6. Rewire your mind by repeating words that empower you. Something extraordinary happens inside the human brain when a thought is repeated often enough. What begins as a fragile, barely there electrical signal gradually becomes a well-worn pathway. The more that signal travels the same route, the stronger and faster that route becomes. Neuroscientists describe this process with a phrase that has become one of the most important insights in modern psychology. Neurons that fire together, wire together. In plain language, this means that whatever you think about repeatedly, whatever you say to yourself consistently, whatever inner conversation you return to again and again, is not just a passing mental event. It is construction work. It is the literal reshaping of the physical structure of your brain. This is not a motivational metaphor. This is biology. And understanding it changes the entire conversation about why repetition in self-talk matters so profoundly. Most people think of repeated thoughts as simply the result of habit, something that happens automatically without much significance. But the science tells a different story. Every time you repeat a thought, you are reinforcing the neural architecture that makes that thought easier to access next time. Every time you speak an empowering word to yourself, you are making the empowered version of your mind slightly more accessible than it was before. And every time you default to a limiting word without questioning it, you are deepening the groove that makes limitation feel like the natural and obvious response to life. The brain you are carrying right now is not the brain you have to keep. This is perhaps the most liberating scientific discovery of the past several decades. For most of human history, the brain was believed to be essentially fixed after childhood. You were dealt a particular set of mental tendencies, and you lived with them for the rest of your life. But research into neuroplasticity has overturned this assumption completely. The brain remains capable of change throughout the entire human lifespan. New pathways can be created. Old pathways can be weakened through disuse. The brain that has spent years reinforcing patterns of self-doubt and limitation can, with consistent and deliberate practice, be genuinely rewired toward capability, resilience, and forward movement. The instrument of that rewiring, available to every person regardless of age, education, or circumstance, is repetition. Specifically, the repetition of words and thoughts that are deliberately chosen to build rather than diminish. This does not require expensive equipment or professional intervention. It requires the decision to take seriously what you say to yourself and the discipline to say it consistently enough that the brain begins to build new architecture around it. Many people have encountered the concept of affirmations and dismissed it, sometimes with good reason. The version of affirmations that gets mocked is the version where a person stands in front of a mirror, mechanically reciting sentences that bear no relationship to anything they actually feel or believe, hoping that sheer repetition will somehow manufacture a transformation that the words themselves do not genuinely connect to. That version does not work particularly well because it misses a critical component of how the brain actually changes. The brain does not simply respond to words, it responds to words combined with emotional engagement. A sentence spoken without any genuine connection to what it means passes through the mind like water through a sieve. It leaves almost no trace. But a sentence spoken with real intention, with a genuine reaching toward the meaning behind the words, with even a small degree of emotional investment in what is being said, travels a very different path through the brain. It activates not just the language centers, but the emotional centers, the memory centers, the areas associated with motivation and decision-making. It creates a richer, more complex neural event that leaves a deeper impression. And when that richer event is repeated consistently, the impression deepens further with every repetition until what was once an effortful, consciously chosen thought becomes a natural, automatic tendency of the mind. This is the difference between mechanical affirmation and genuine mental rewiring. The words matter, but the relationship you bring to those words matters just as much. When you say, "I am capable of handling what comes my way," the question is not just whether you are saying it, but whether some part of you is genuinely reaching toward the truth of it. Whether you are letting it land rather than just letting it pass. Whether you are connecting the words to even one piece of evidence from your actual life that supports the statement. The practice of mental rewiring through empowering repetition works most effectively when it is embedded into the natural rhythm of daily life rather than isolated in a single session that happens once and then is forgotten until tomorrow. The mind is always active. There is never a moment during waking life when the brain is not processing, interpreting, narrating. This means there is never a shortage of opportunities to choose empowering language over diminishing language. Every time you face a task that feels difficult, the moment when the mind reaches for "I cannot do this" is also the moment when you can intercept that reach and redirect it toward "I have not mastered this yet, and I am working on it." Every time something goes unexpectedly, the moment the mind reaches for "everything is falling apart" is also the moment you can offer it. "This is not what I planned, and I can find a way through it." These redirections do not have to be elaborate. They do not have to be lengthy inner speeches. They can be a single sentence, sometimes even a single word, chosen deliberately to shift the direction of the thought before the limiting version has the chance to settle in and take root. The power is not in the length of the empowering statement. The power is in the consistency of the interception, in the daily, repeated practice of catching the mind, moving toward diminishment, and steering it toward capability instead. There is a specific category of empowering words that deserves particular attention because of the disproportionate impact they carry. These are identity-level statements, words that speak not just about what you are doing, but about who you are. The difference between a behavioral statement and an identity statement is significant in terms of how deeply the brain encodes the message. "I am going to try to be more disciplined" operates at the level of behavior. It describes an action you intend to take. "I am a disciplined person who honors my commitments" operates at the level of identity. It describes who you are. And the brain, which is constantly working to maintain consistency between a person's self-concept and their actions, responds to identity-level statements with a different kind of urgency. It begins to look for ways to act in alignment with the stated identity. It begins to notice opportunities to express the qualities named in the identity statement. It begins, gradually but genuinely, to organize behavior around the new self-concept. This is why the most effective empowering repetitions are often identity statements rather than purely behavioral ones. Not, "I will try to be more confident," but "I am someone who faces challenges with courage." Not, "I am going to work on being more patient," but "I am a person who responds to difficulty with steadiness." These statements are not lies you are telling yourself. They are directions you are giving your brain about the identity you are actively building. And the brain, understanding itself as a system designed to maintain coherence between self-concept and behavior, will begin working to close the gap between the stated identity and the current reality. The timeline of this process is worth understanding clearly, because impatience is one of the most common reasons people abandon the practice before it has the chance to produce visible results. The brain does not rewire overnight. The first few days of consistent, empowering repetition will likely feel effortful and sometimes unconvincing. The old pathways are still strong, The new ones are just beginning to form. There will be moments when the empowering statement feels like a thin voice speaking against a much louder crowd of established doubts. This is normal. This is expected. This is exactly what the early stage of genuine neural rewiring feels like. By the end of a week of consistent practice, something begins to shift. The empowering statements start to feel slightly more natural, slightly less forced. The interceptions come a little faster. The gap between the limiting thought arriving and the empowering redirection following begins to close. This is not imagination. This is the measurable effect of repetition on neural pathway strength. The new route is beginning to establish itself. It is not yet the dominant highway that the old limiting thought travels on, but it is becoming a real road rather than just an intention. Keep going past the 7 days. That is the honest instruction this chapter offers. The 7-day practice is a beginning, not a completion. What the 7 days will give you is the experience of what it feels like when the process starts working. The tangible sense that your inner conversation is genuinely shifting, that the empowering words are landing differently than they did on day one, that the mind is beginning to respond to them as familiar rather than foreign. That experience is what makes the continuation of the practice feel worthwhile rather than theoretical. The words you repeat to yourself are not just words. They are instructions delivered to the most complex and responsive system in the known universe, which is the human brain. That brain is listening to everything you say. It is building its architecture around the content of your inner conversation. It is shaping your perception, your decisions, your emotional responses, and your sense of what is possible for you, based in no small part on the language you consistently feed it. Feed it language that expands rather than contracts. Feed it words that point toward capability rather than limitation. Feed it statements that treat you as a person worthy of growth and effort and genuine possibility. Do this consistently, with intention, with even a small degree of genuine emotional connection to the meaning behind the words, and you will experience something that most people believe requires extraordinary luck or exceptional circumstances to achieve. You will experience the mind becoming your ally rather than your obstacle. You will experience the remarkable result of a brain that has been deliberately, patiently, consistently rewired toward the life you are actually capable of living. That rewiring starts with the next word you choose to say to yourself. Make it one worth repeating. Chapter 7. Choose words today that create the person you want. Every person you have ever admired was once standing exactly where you are standing right now. Before the confidence was visible, before the accomplishments were real, before the life they built became something others looked at with respect and inspiration, they were ordinary people navigating ordinary days with ordinary doubts. What separated their trajectory from the people around them was not a sudden gift from the universe. It was not a dramatic moment of transformation that arrived uninvited and changed everything overnight. It was something far quieter and far more accessible than most people realize. It was the daily, cumulative effect of the words they chose to speak into their own lives before those lives showed any outward sign of becoming what they eventually became. You are not yet the person you want to be. And that sentence, rather than being a source of discouragement, is actually one of the most honest and empowering truths available to you right now. Because it contains within it the acknowledgement that the person you want to be is real, that they exist as a genuine possibility, and that the distance between who you are today and who you are capable of becoming is not a measurement of your inadequacy, but a measurement of your potential. The question is not whether that person is possible. The question is what you are going to do today, in the hours ahead, in the conversations you have with yourself between now and when you close your eyes tonight, to begin moving toward that version of yourself rather than away from it. Words are not just descriptions of reality, they are participants in the creation of reality. This is a principle that cuts across philosophy, psychology, and the lived experience of anyone who has paid close attention to how inner language shapes outer life. When you consistently describe yourself in limiting terms, you are not just observing who you are actively participating in the construction of who you remain. When you describe yourself in terms that reach toward who you want to become, you are not just engaging in wishful thinking, you are laying real groundwork. You are giving your mind a blueprint and instructing it, through the language you repeat, to begin organizing your perceptions, decisions, and behaviors around that blueprint. The person you want to become already exists in a very real sense. They exist as a pattern of thoughts, habits, values, and behaviors that you have the raw material to build right now, today, with what you already carry inside you. The gap between current you and future you is not filled with things you need to acquire from outside. It is filled primarily with the daily choices about how you think, how you speak to yourself, and what you decide to practice. And of all the daily choices available to you, the choice of language, specifically the language of your inner conversation, is among the most direct levers you have for accelerating or slowing that process of becoming. There is a concept worth sitting with carefully here. It is the idea of speaking from your future rather than from your present limitations. Most people narrate their inner life from the perspective of their current circumstances and their current struggles. They say, "I am someone who struggles with confidence," because that is the present reality they are most aware of. They say, "I am not good at maintaining discipline," because that has been the pattern they have observed most consistently. They say, "I tend to give up when things get hard," because that is the story the past has told most loudly. All of these statements may contain some truth, but they are not the whole truth. And more importantly, they are not fixed truths. They are descriptions of patterns, and patterns are changeable. Speaking from your future means choosing language that describes the person you are in the process of becoming, rather than anchoring every self-description to the most limiting version of your past patterns. It means saying, "I am developing real confidence through daily practice," rather than, "I struggle with confidence." It means saying, "I am building my discipline one decision at a time," rather than, "I am not a disciplined person." It means saying, "I am learning to stay committed through difficulty," rather than, "I tend to give up." These are not denials of your history. They are redirections of your trajectory. They honor where you have been, while refusing to let where you have been become the ceiling of where you are allowed to go. The specific words you choose matter in ways that go beyond their surface meaning. Language carries emotional charge, and different words trigger different physiological and psychological responses, even when they describe similar situations. The word problem and the word challenge describe roughly the same external situation, but they produce measurably different internal responses. A problem feels like something unwanted that has been done to you. A challenge feels like something that requires your engagement and capability. The word failure and the word attempt describe roughly the same event, but one closes the conversation and the other keeps it open. The word exhausted and the word fully invested can describe the same physical state, but orient the mind toward completely different meanings and responses. Paying close attention to the specific words you default to in your inner conversation and making deliberate substitutions where those words are creating unnecessary limitation or emotional weight is a practice that costs nothing and produces genuine change over time. You do not need to overhaul your entire vocabulary in a single afternoon. You need only to begin noticing the words that show up most frequently in your inner conversation, and asking, honestly, whether those words are serving the person you are trying to become. One of the most powerful and underused practices in personal development is what can be described as future self-dialogue. This is the practice of deliberately imagining the person you want to become and then asking, in a genuine and reflective way, how that person speaks to themselves, not how you currently speak to yourself. How they do. The person who has developed the confidence you want, the discipline you are building toward, the resilience you are working to strengthen, how does that person narrate their inner life? What do they say when they face a setback? What do they say when they achieve something? What do they say to themselves at the beginning of a hard day, in the middle of a difficult challenge, at the end of a long week? When you engage honestly with these questions, you begin to discover that the language of the person you want to become is available to you right now. You do not need to wait until you have become that person before you start speaking the way they speak. The speaking is part of how the becoming happens. You begin to close the gap between who you are and who you want to be, partly by choosing, today, to speak from within that future identity rather than waiting outside it for permission to enter. This is a practice that requires both honesty and courage. Honesty, because speaking from your future self is not the same as pretending your present challenges do not exist. The future version of you did not become who they are by ignoring reality. They became who they are by facing reality directly, while consistently choosing language that oriented them toward growth rather than toward surrender. And courage, because choosing words that reach beyond your current comfort zone, words that describe a version of yourself that has not yet fully materialized, will sometimes feel presumptuous or uncomfortable. The mind that has been living in limitation for a long time will often resist language that implies expansion. It will say, "Who do you think you are?" speaking about yourself that way. And the answer to that question is simple and important. You are the person who is building toward something real, and you are choosing language that reflects that building rather than language that denies it. The daily practice this chapter invites is straightforward, but requires genuine attention. At some point each day, ideally in a quiet moment when you can give it real focus, ask yourself one question. What is one thing I want to become more fully? And what is one sentence I can say to myself today that reflects that becoming? The answer does not need to be elaborate. It does not need to be perfectly crafted. It just needs to be honest and forward-pointing. I am becoming someone who trusts their own judgment. I am developing the patience to build something slowly and well. I am growing into a person who faces fear without letting it make decisions for them. One sentence, said with genuine intention, returned to throughout the day whenever the mind tries to default to its older, smaller story. The accumulation of these daily sentences, chosen carefully and spoken consistently, is not a trivial thing. Over days and weeks and months, they represent a sustained act of self-authorship. They represent the decision to participate actively in the construction of your own character, rather than to simply receive whatever the unexamined mind produces by default. Most people drift through life without ever making this decision consciously. They become whoever their circumstances and automatic habits make them, and then they wonder why the life they are living does not feel fully like their own. You are not most people. The fact that you are here, reading these words, engaging with these ideas, practicing this kind of deliberate inner work, already puts you in a different category. Not a superior category, but a more intentional one. You are someone who has decided that the person they become is worth thinking carefully about. You are someone who has accepted, at least in principle, that the inner conversation is a creative force and not just a passive reflection. And you are someone who is willing to do the quiet, unsexy, daily work of choosing better words, even on the days when it is hard and the results are not yet visible. The person you want to become is not somewhere out in the future waiting for you to arrive. They are here, now, taking shape with every word you choose, every inner sentence you craft, every moment you decide to speak to yourself from possibility rather than limitation. Today is not a rehearsal for the day when the real work begins. Today is the work. The words you choose right now, in this ordinary day, with its ordinary challenges and its ordinary opportunities, are the words that are creating the extraordinary person you are becoming. Choose them like it matters, because it does, because you do, and because the person you are becoming deserves to be spoken into existence by someone who believes completely in their potential. That someone is you. It has always been you. And starting today, your words will finally begin to reflect that truth. Chapter 8. Transform your pain into power through honest self-talk. Pain is not the enemy of a meaningful life. Avoided pain is. Unexamined pain is. Pain that has been buried under distraction, numbed by habit, or silenced by the refusal to look at it honestly, that is the pain that quietly runs the show from behind the curtain. That is the pain that shapes decisions without being acknowledged, that poisons relationships without being named, that limits potential without ever being confronted directly. The pain you are willing to sit with honestly, to speak about truthfully to yourself, to examine with clear eyes rather than flinching away from, that pain carries within it something that most people never discover because they never stay long enough to find it. It carries the raw material of genuine strength. Every person reading these words has been through something hard. Not the same hard, not hard of equal weight or equal duration, but something that left a mark, something that changed the way they see themselves or the world around them. Something that, if they are honest, still influences how they move through their days, even when they believe they have long since moved past it. The losses that were never fully grieved, the betrayals that reshaped trust in ways that never quite healed, the failures that arrived at moments when everything felt contingent on success, the humiliations that lodged themselves so deeply in the memory that the mind still produces them unprompted, years later, as fresh evidence of unworthiness. These experiences are real, their weight is real, and no amount of positive thinking, forced reframing, or motivational language applied carelessly over the surface of genuine pain will actually address what those experiences left behind. This is where so much well-intentioned personal development advice fails the people it is trying to help. It rushes too quickly toward the silver lining without spending adequate time in honest acknowledgement of the wound. It tells people to focus on the lesson without first honoring the reality of what it cost to receive that lesson. And the result is people who can recite all the right principles about growth and resilience while still carrying unprocessed pain that undermines everything those principles are trying to build. Honest self-talk, the kind this chapter is about, does not bypass the pain. It goes directly through it. It begins with a willingness to name what happened without minimizing it, without exaggerating it, without wrapping it in the kind of language that either makes it smaller than it was or larger than it needs to remain. Honest self-talk about pain sounds like, "That experience genuinely hurt me, and it affected me in ways I am still working through." It sounds like, "I lost something real, and the grief of that loss deserves to be acknowledged rather than dismissed." It sounds like, "What happened to me was not acceptable, and I do not need to pretend it was fine in order to move forward from it." There is an enormous difference between honest acknowledgement and permanent residence. Acknowledging your pain honestly does not mean living inside it indefinitely. It means giving it the genuine recognition it requires before asking it to transform into something else. Pain that has been truly seen, truly named, truly felt, without being immediately chased away, begins to lose its power to operate invisibly. It no longer needs to shout from the background because it has finally been heard in the foreground. This is the paradox that honest self-talk about pain reveals. The fastest path through pain is not around it. It is directly through the honest, clear-eyed acknowledgement of what it actually is. Once the acknowledgement is real, once you have spoken truthfully to yourself about what happened and what it cost you, the next dimension of honest self-talk becomes available. This is the dimension where pain begins its conversion into power, and it begins with a specific kind of question, not "Why did this happen to me?" Because that question, while understandable, tends to lead the mind into a loop of helplessness and grievance that does not have an exit. Instead, the question that unlocks transformation is, what has this experience given me that I did not have before? This is not a question about gratitude for suffering. It is not an instruction to feel thankful for things that were genuinely painful or wrong. It is a question about excavation, about looking at the experience honestly enough and long enough to find what is actually there beneath the obvious surface of the wound. Because in almost every significant experience of pain, if examined honestly, there is something of genuine value that the comfortable version of life could not have produced. The person who has lived through profound loss carries a depth of compassion that cannot be manufactured without genuine grief. The person who has failed publicly and survived carries a relationship with humility and courage that the person who has never risked anything simply does not have access to. The person who has been betrayed and chosen to continue trusting carries a quality of conscious, deliberate faith in human connection that is incomparably more meaningful than the naive trust that existed before the betrayal. None of this means the pain was good. It means the pain was not only pain. And honest self-talk is the tool that allows you to hold both truths simultaneously without collapsing either one. That experience was genuinely damaging, and it also showed me something about my own resilience that I would not have known otherwise. Both of those sentences can be true at the same time. The honest inner conversation is large enough to hold them both. There is a particular form of self-talk that many people use unconsciously that keeps pain locked in place rather than allowing it to move and transform. It is the language of permanent victimhood, not the acknowledgement that something painful happened, which is honest and legitimate, but the ongoing daily narration that defines identity entirely through the lens of what was done to a person. I am someone who was abandoned. I am someone who was failed by the people who should have protected me. I am someone who had opportunities taken away before I could use them. These statements may all be historically true, but spoken as present tense identity rather than past tense event, they function as a cage. They keep the person who was hurt locked in permanent relationship with the source of that hurt, organized around it, defined by it, unable to move beyond it because the inner conversation keeps returning to it as the central fact of who they are. The shift from victim language to survivor language to thriver language is not a single moment of decision. It is a gradual process that happens through the consistent choice of different words to describe the relationship between your past and your present. Victim language says, I am defined by what was done to me. Survivor language says, I have lived through what was done to me and I am still here. Thriver language says, what was done to me is part of my story, and it is not the whole story, and it is not the final word on what my life will become. Each shift requires the previous one. You cannot skip from victim to thriver without first moving through the honest acknowledgement that comes with survivor language. but the movement is possible for every person who is willing to keep updating the inner narrative rather than freezing it at the most painful moment. Honest self-talk about pain also requires a clear-eyed conversation with yourself about the ways pain may have shaped behavior patterns that no longer serve you. This is perhaps the most challenging dimension of this work because it involves taking responsibility without taking blame. These are not the same thing. Blame is about moral judgment, about assigning fault, about the past. Responsibility is about agency, about what you do with what you have been given, about the present and the future. When pain from the past has produced patterns of behavior that are creating problems in the present, honest self-talk invites you to see that connection clearly and to speak to yourself about it with both compassion and clarity. The way I shut down emotionally when I feel threatened makes sense given what I experienced, and it is also creating distance in relationships that matter to me, and I am willing to work on changing it. That sentence is both compassionate and honest. It acknowledges the origin of the pattern without using that origin as a permanent excuse for maintaining it. It treats the behavior as something that developed for understandable reasons and is also changeable for equally understandable reasons. This kind of honest inner conversation is not comfortable, but it is the conversation that creates genuine forward movement rather than the illusion of it. The power that lives on the other side of this process is not the brittle, surface-level confidence of someone who has never been tested. It is something far more durable. It is the quiet, unshakable quality of a person who has been through real difficulty, who has looked at it honestly, who has spoken about it truthfully to themselves, and who has discovered in that process that they are not destroyed by what they have faced. That discovery changes everything. It changes the relationship with future difficulty. It changes the threshold of what feels genuinely threatening versus merely uncomfortable. It changes the way a person stands in the world because they are no longer carrying the hidden weight of pain that has never been honestly examined and therefore never been genuinely processed. Speaking honestly to yourself about your pain is an act of profound self-respect. It says, "My experience matters enough to be looked at clearly rather than buried or dramatized." It says, "I am strong enough to face what has happened without either collapsing under it or pretending it did not exist." It says, "I trust myself to hold the truth of my own story without being destroyed by it." And from that place of honest self-trust, from that willingness to look clearly at both the wound and the strength that survived it, something begins to emerge that no comfortable life and no avoided pain could ever produce. It is the kind of power that only comes from having been genuinely tested, the kind of wisdom that only comes from having genuinely suffered and chosen to grow anyway. The kind of compassion that only comes from having known real darkness and decided, through honest, daily conversation with yourself, to orient toward the light, not because the darkness was never real, but because you are more than what the darkness tried to make you. Your pain has something to give you. The door to that gift is honesty. Open it today. Speak the truth to yourself about what you have been through, what it cost, what it taught, and what it is still trying to show you. That conversation, however uncomfortable it may feel to begin, is the beginning of a transformation that nothing external could ever provide. It is the transformation that comes from within, built from the raw material of your most honest self-talk, shaped by the courage to look clearly at your own story and decide, with full knowledge of everything it contains, that you are not finished yet. Chapter 9. Commit to speaking kindly to yourself without stopping. There is a conversation happening right now in millions of lives that would be considered completely unacceptable if it were taking place between two people in public. It is a conversation filled with contempt, with impatience, with the kind of relentless criticism that would cause immediate concern if anyone overheard it directed at another human being. People would intervene. They would say something. They would recognize it as harmful and wrong and deserving of attention. But because this conversation is happening silently, inside the minds of the very people conducting it, it continues without interruption, without challenge, and without the intervention it genuinely deserves. This is the conversation most people have with themselves every single day. The decision to commit to speaking kindly to yourself is not a small lifestyle adjustment. It is not a minor tweak to your daily routine. It is a fundamental repositioning of the most important relationship in your life, which is the relationship you have with yourself. Every other relationship you will ever have, every friendship, every partnership, every professional connection, every bond you build with another human being, is filtered through and shaped by the quality of the relationship you carry with your own inner life. When that inner relationship is characterized by harshness, by chronic dissatisfaction, by the kind of relentless criticism that never acknowledges effort and never celebrates progress, it leaks into everything. It colors how you receive love from others, how you give it, how you show up in rooms, how you handle conflict, and how you respond when life asks more of you than you feel prepared to give. Kindness toward yourself is not indulgence. This distinction needs to be stated clearly and returned to often, because it is the misunderstanding that stops so many people from ever fully committing to this practice. Indulgence means avoiding the discomfort of growth. It means making excuses for patterns that genuinely need to change. It means choosing comfort over development and calling that choice self-care. Kindness is something entirely different. Kindness means treating yourself with the same basic dignity and respect that every human being inherently deserves, while still holding yourself to standards that reflect genuine self-respect. A kind inner voice does not say, "That mistake does not matter." It says, "That mistake happened, and you are capable of understanding it and doing better." A kind inner voice does not say, "You do not need to push yourself." It says, "You are worth the effort of pushing yourself toward what you are genuinely capable of." The confusion between kindness and indulgence is one of the primary reasons people unconsciously resist committing to gentler self-talk. They have come to believe, often without ever examining the belief directly, that being hard on themselves is what keeps them functioning, what keeps them honest, what keeps them from becoming complacent. They have built an identity around the idea that their harshness toward themselves is a form of integrity, a sign that they care deeply about doing well. But caring deeply about doing well does not require treating yourself with contempt. A surgeon who cares deeply about their patients does not berate themselves into competence. They study, they practice, they reflect on what went wrong and how to improve. And they do all of this from a foundation of belief in their own capacity to grow. That same approach is available in the inner conversation of every human being. Committing to kindness in self-talk means making a decision that is not contingent on how well things are going. This is the word in this chapter's title that carries the most weight. Commit, not try. Not attempt when it feels natural. Not practice on the easy days when everything is going smoothly and speaking kindly to yourself requires no real effort. Commit, which means continuing the practice through the difficult days, through the failures, through the moments when the old habit of self-attack arrives with tremendous force and the kind voice feels thin and inadequate by comparison. Commitment in any area of life is not tested during the easy periods. It is tested during the periods when everything inside you wants to revert to what is familiar. And for most people, what is familiar is harshness. What is familiar is the internal voice that rushes to judgment, that catalogues errors with precision while remaining largely blind to effort and progress, that holds you to a standard of perfection that it would never apply to anyone else you care about. Committing to kindness means recognizing those familiar pulls back toward harshness and choosing differently anyway, not because it is easy, but because the alternative has already proven its inability to produce the life and the inner experience you genuinely want. There is a specific practice that builds the muscle of committed self-kindness in a way that is both grounded and sustainable. It begins with the end of each day rather than the beginning. While the morning practice discussed in earlier chapters is about priming the mind for what is ahead, the evening practice is about honest and compassionate review of what has passed. Before sleep, rather than running through the day's failures and shortcomings with the prosecutorial energy of an inner critic that never rests, you conduct a different kind of review. You ask 3 specific questions. What did I do today that deserves genuine acknowledgement? Where did I struggle today? And what does that struggle tell me about what I need? What is one thing I want to carry forward into tomorrow that reflects who I am choosing to become? These questions are not designed to produce a highlight reel of false positivity. They are designed to ensure that the honest review of the day includes the full picture rather than only the parts that confirm inadequacy. Because the truth is that on almost every day, including the ones that feel like failures, there is something that deserves acknowledgement. There is some effort made, some difficulty navigated, some small act of integrity or care or persistence that the inner critic would completely skip over in its rush to compile the evidence against you. The committed practice of self-kindness insists on seeing that evidence too. It insists on balance. And balance, in the inner conversation of someone who has spent years defaulting to self-criticism, often means deliberately amplifying the acknowledgement of what went right until it can be heard at the same volume as the awareness of what went wrong. Kindness in self-talk also involves learning to speak to yourself differently during the moments of highest vulnerability. These are the moments when the temptation towards self-attack is strongest because the pain or embarrassment or disappointment is most acute. The moment immediately after a significant failure, the moment when you receive critical feedback that touches something tender, the moment when you compare your current reality to where you hoped you would be and the gap feels unbearable. These are the moments when the committed practice of self-kindness is most tested and most valuable, because what you say to yourself in those moments does not just affect how you feel in the short term. It determines whether you get back up or stay down. It determines whether you learn from the experience or are crushed by it. It determines whether the pain becomes a turning point or a stopping point. In those high vulnerability moments, the practice of self-kindness does not require elaborate inner speeches. It often requires only a single sentence that contains both honesty and compassion simultaneously. This is genuinely hard right now, and I am still here. I did not handle that well, and I am a person who is capable of growth. This hurts in a real way, and pain does not have the final word on what I do next. Short, honest, forward-pointing sentences spoken in the tone of a person who genuinely cares about the well-being of the one they are speaking to. That person is you, speaking to yourself. In the moments when you most need to hear a kind voice, and when the world around you may not be providing one. One of the most transformative aspects of committing to long-term self-kindness is what it does to the relationship between self-talk and action. When the inner voice is consistently harsh, the mind begins to associate effort and attempt with the risk of the criticism that follows failure. Over time, this association produces a subtle but powerful reluctance to try. Why take the risk of attempting something difficult if the cost of failure is a brutal inner verdict that leaves you feeling worse than if you had never tried at all? The harsh inner voice, intended by the mind that wields it as a motivator, actually becomes one of the primary generators of avoidance and stagnation. People stop reaching because reaching and falling has been made too painful by the inner conversation that follows every stumble. Kindness changes this equation. When the inner voice responds to failure with honest compassion rather than prosecution, the cost of attempting something difficult drops dramatically. The mind learns that reaching and falling will be met with understanding rather than contempt, with curiosity about what can be learned rather than a verdict about what the failure proves. And when the cost of attempting drops, the frequency of attempting increases. The person who speaks kindly to themselves after failure attempts more things, recovers faster, learns more efficiently, and accumulates the kind of compounding experience and resilience that produces genuine long-term growth. This is the practical case for committed self-kindness, separate from any argument about what you deserve as a human being, which is already a complete argument on its own. Kindness toward yourself is not just ethically right, it is strategically superior to harshness as a method for producing growth, recovery, and sustained forward movement over a lifetime. The commitment this chapter calls you to is not a promise to be perfect at self-kindness. There will be days when the old habits win. There will be moments when the inner critic gets the microphone before the kind voice has the chance to reach for it. The commitment is not to perfection, it is to return. To notice when the conversation has slipped back into harshness, and to return without making that return itself into another occasion for self-criticism, to the practice of speaking to yourself with the dignity and patience and genuine care that every human life deserves. Because here is what becomes possible when you sustain that commitment across weeks and months and years. You stop being at war with yourself. You stop spending the enormous energy that self-attack requires on a battle that produces no winners. You redirect that energy outward and forward, toward the relationships, the work, the creative pursuits, the acts of service, and the daily experiences of genuine aliveness that your life is actually for. You become, gradually and then suddenly, a person who is at peace with the reality of being imperfect and still worthy, a person who can acknowledge their limitations without being diminished by them, a person who treats themselves well enough that they naturally begin to create a life that reflects that treatment. That life is not waiting somewhere far away. It is being built right now in the quality of the conversation you are willing to commit to having with yourself. Not just today, not just for 7 days, but tomorrow and the day after that and every ordinary day that follows, for as long as you are alive to choose the words. Choose kindness every single time you remember to, and when you forget, choose it again. That is what commitment looks like. That is what it builds. And what it builds, over a lifetime of choosing again, is a life that finally feels like home. Chapter 10. Live differently because you finally changed how you speak. Something has shifted. You may not be able to point to a single dramatic moment where everything changed. You may not have a clear before and after photograph of the transformation. But if you have traveled honestly through the pages of this book, if you have engaged genuinely with the practices, sat with the uncomfortable questions, and returned day after day to the work of changing the conversation inside your own mind, something real has moved. Something that was fixed has become flexible. Something that felt permanent has revealed itself to be changeable. And the life that is available to you on the other side of that shift is genuinely different from the life that was available to you before you began. This final chapter is not a summary. It is not a list of reminders about what the previous chapters taught. It is an invitation to step fully into the reality of what a changed inner conversation actually produces in the texture of daily living. Because the point of everything covered in this book was never the inner work itself. The inner work was always in service of something larger. It was in service of a life that feels more honest, more purposeful, more genuinely inhabited by the person you actually are and the person you are still becoming. Living differently does not announce itself with fanfare. It does not arrive as a single morning where you wake up and everything feels perfect and all the old patterns have evaporated overnight. It arrives quietly, in small moments that accumulate into something undeniable. It arrives the first time you face a situation that previously would have sent you into a spiral of self-doubt, and you notice, with genuine surprise, that the spiral does not come. Not because the situation is less challenging, but because the inner response to challenge has changed. The conversation that begins inside you when difficulty appears is a different conversation than the one that used to begin automatically, and that different conversation produces a different experience, a different set of choices, a different outcome. It arrives the first time someone criticizes you, and you are able to hear the feedback without it collapsing your sense of worth. Not because criticism no longer stings, it may still sting, but the sting no longer reaches the foundation. It no longer touches the place where your belief in your own value lives, because that place has been built more solidly through months of consistent, deliberate, kind, and honest inner conversation. The criticism lands on the surface, and you are able to examine it with genuine openness, take what is useful, and release what is not, without the entire exercise becoming an occasion for self-destruction. It arrives the first time you attempt something genuinely difficult and fail at it, and your first inner response is not contempt, but curiosity. Not, "I knew I could not do this, but that did not work and I want to understand why." That shift, seemingly small, is actually enormous in its implications, because curiosity leads somewhere. Curiosity generates questions, and questions generate learning, and learning generates growth. Contempt leads nowhere. It ends the conversation before the most important part has begun. The person whose inner voice has shifted from contempt to curiosity after failure has access to a completely different set of futures than the person who has not made that shift. There is also something that changes in the way the body carries itself when the inner conversation changes. This is not something most people anticipate when they begin the work of transforming their self-talk, but it is one of the most consistently reported experiences of people who have committed genuinely to this practice over time. The body responds to the inner voice. Chronic self-criticism does not stay contained within the mind. It expresses itself physically in the way a person holds their shoulders, in the quality of their eye contact, in the degree of presence they bring to rooms and conversations, in the subtle signals of permission or apology that the body unconsciously broadcasts to the world. When the inner conversation shifts toward genuine self-respect and forward-pointing honesty, the body shifts with it. Not because of any deliberate effort to change posture or presentation, but because the physical expression of a person is always, in some measure, a reflection of the inner life they are carrying. People around you will notice this change before you fully do. This is one of the interesting and sometimes disorienting aspects of genuine inner transformation. The people who know you will begin to respond to you differently, not because you have performed a different version of yourself for their benefit, but because something authentic has changed in how you occupy space, how you speak, how you engage with difficulty, and how you carry your own presence. Some of those people will welcome the change immediately and enthusiastically. Others may find it unsettling because the changed version of you disrupts the familiar dynamic they had grown comfortable with. And some may not consciously notice the change at all, but will simply find themselves responding to you with more respect, more openness, more genuine engagement than they did before. None of these external responses should become the measure of whether the inner work is real. The external world's response to your transformation is interesting information, but it is not the validation the transformation requires. The validation is internal. It is the lived experience of moving through your days with a quality of inner conversation that serves rather than undermines you. That is the only measure that ultimately matters, and it is a measure only you have access to. Living differently also means relating differently to time and to progress. One of the consistent effects of a changed inner conversation is a shift in the relationship with patience. When the inner voice was harsh and critical, every day that did not produce visible results felt like evidence of failure. Every slow period felt like confirmation that the effort was pointless. Every setback felt like a sign that the goal was unreachable. But when the inner voice has been retrained toward honest compassion and forward-pointing assessment, the relationship with the pace of growth changes. You begin to understand, at a level deeper than intellectual agreement, that meaningful change unfolds over time and that the daily practice of showing up is itself the achievement, regardless of what any particular day produces in measurable terms. This changed relationship with patience is one of the most practically valuable outcomes of sustained work on self-talk, because patience is what separates people who achieve extraordinary things over time from people who achieve impressive things briefly and then abandon them. The ability to keep going when results are slow, when progress is invisible, when the goal feels far away and the effort feels disproportionate to the current returns, that ability is built in large part from the quality of the inner conversation maintained during those slow and difficult stretches. The person who can speak encouragingly to themselves during a plateau, who can say honestly, "This is a slow period and my effort is still real and still building something," will outlast and ultimately outperform the person of equal or greater talent who cannot maintain belief in the absence of immediate evidence. The relationship with other people also shifts in ways that are profound and sometimes unexpected. When you stop carrying chronic self-criticism as your baseline inner experience, you find that you have significantly more genuine capacity for the people around you. The mental and emotional bandwidth that was previously consumed by the relentless work of self-attack becomes available for actual presence, actual listening, actual engagement with the lives and experiences of others. Relationships that felt draining become more sustainable. Connections that felt superficial become deeper, because you are now capable of showing up to them more fully than you could when so much of your inner resources were occupied by your own internal war. You also find that your tolerance for the way other people speak to you changes, not in the direction of greater sensitivity or defensiveness, but in the direction of greater clarity about what you are willing to accept. When you have committed to speaking to yourself with dignity and respect, the contrast between that internal standard and the way certain people in your life communicate with you becomes more apparent and harder to rationalize away. Some relationships will improve because your changed inner conversation changes how you engage within them. Some relationships will reveal themselves to have been sustained primarily by your own willingness to accept treatment that a person with genuine self-respect would not accept. And some relationships will simply deepen because the more honest and grounded version of you that emerges from this work is a more genuine and ultimately more connectable human being. The work this book has guided you through across 10 chapters is not finished. It was never designed to be finished in the sense of being completed and then set aside. The practice of intentional self-talk is a lifelong practice, not because you will always be broken and always need fixing, but because growth itself is a lifelong process, and the inner conversation is the instrument through which that growth is sustained and navigated. There will be periods when the practice feels effortless and natural. There will be periods when old patterns resurface with surprising force and the work feels as difficult as it did at the beginning. Both of those experiences are part of the journey rather than signs of success or failure within it. What has fundamentally changed is not that the challenges of self-talk have been permanently eliminated. What has changed is that you now know they are challenges rather than fixed truths. You now know that the voice inside your head is not an oracle delivering unchangeable verdicts about your worth and your potential. It is a practice. It is a skill. It is something you can influence, direct, and continually develop. And that knowledge, once genuinely integrated, changes the entire game. Because a challenge you know you can work with is a completely different experience from a fixed reality you believe you must simply endure. You have spent this book learning to talk to yourself differently. What that different conversation produces over the days and months and years ahead is a life that reflects the truth of who you actually are, rather than the distorted image that years of unconsidered self-talk had constructed. A life where your energy goes toward building rather than self-destruction. A life where difficulty is met with the full force of your genuine capability rather than the diminished version that chronic self-doubt had been presenting to the world. A life where the most important relationship you have, the one with yourself, is characterized by the same honesty, the same patience, the same genuine investment in growth and well-being that you would offer to anyone you deeply love. That life is not somewhere ahead waiting to be reached. It is being lived right now. In every conversation you choose to have with yourself, in every word you select from the available options, in every moment you decide that the person speaking inside your head deserves to be someone worth listening to. You changed how you speak. Now watch what that changes. Watch how differently you move through rooms that once felt intimidating. Watch how differently you recover from the inevitable stumbles of an engaged and risk-taking life. Watch how differently you relate to your own potential, no longer as something distant and conditional, but as something present and active and genuinely yours to develop. Watch how differently the world responds when the person it is encountering has finally stopped fighting against themselves and started, fully and without reservation, fighting for themselves instead. This is what 7 days of talking to yourself differently begins to build. Not a perfect life, not a life without struggle or loss, or the ordinary difficulties that are simply part of being human, but a life that is genuinely, unmistakably, and increasingly your own. Built from the inside out, shaped by intention rather than accident. Guided by a voice that has finally learned to speak to you the way you always deserve to be spoken to. The conversation continues. It always will. Make it one worth having.